Today in Flex in the City, we talk to Falk Fischer, CEO of Julius Baer Europe, Luxembourg, as he describes navigating change, cultures, and connections, unveiling the 6 C's and the power of perspective in financial services. All that happening right now in Flex and the City.
Hello, everybody. This is Rachel Treese for Flexed and the City. And I'm in Switzerland, or very close to Switzerland, with Falk Fischer. And he's the CEO of Julius Baer Europe in Luxembourg. Pleasure to have you on Flex and the City, Falk.
Hi, Rachel. Pleasure is all mine. Has been a while.
It has been a while. So remind me, you are German, aren't you?
I am. By passport, I am, but that's literally all.
That's literally all. Oh, you need to tell me a little bit more then. So tell me a little bit about your background then, with that little bit of
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Rachel, yeah.
How you came to Luxembourg.
Let's start with that. Well, it will probably take a while, because, born in Germany, but let's look a little bit back in history, because I'm a little bit older than everyone here. I was born in East Germany before the wall came down. So we are talking here about the 60s. My father, or my parents, but particularly my father, they worked as specialists in foreign trade. And that's why I didn't grow up in East Germany. My hometown literally is Havana.
Is Havana? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me more.
Yeah, so that's the background. No, actually, it was like that before the wall came down, before the Iron Curtain came down, we all know that there was East and West. And as I said, my parents were in foreign trade for chemical products, and Havana was one of, let's say, the main locations for that with whole Latin and South America, because back then these were agricultural countries, and that's why my father was based there. So I grew up there, literally. I went to school there. And then when I was about 12, we left Havana, went to China. So
let's go back to Havana for a second. So what language were you educated in?
Actually, German was our mother tongue at home. Spanish at the street. Mm-hmm. That was literally at the beginning. I'll come back to Havana in a second, because then we went to China, and that was in the late 70s, so right after the Cultural Revolution and all that, for a short period. And then we went back to Havana. And then nowadays we would say international school. You know? So many of the young people today here in Luxembourg, they attend international schools. I had to attend one as well in Havana, which was a Soviet one.
Oh, wow.
Well, we all need to remember before the wall came down. So I went to let's say, Russian-speaking Soviet school, and I graduated there. So my academic language is Russian. So that's why I spent my entire life when I was let's say younger, up to when did I leave Havana? I was 19, I guess, yeah. In Cuba. So I'm socialized Cuban. I might be German by passport, but literally I'm not.
That's amazing. So how many languages do you speak?
Oh, well, no, not just four. This is just German, this is Spanish, this is Russian, and this is English.
Wow, amazing.
And a little bit of Luxembourgish, just a little bit, you know?
Yeah, so an interesting thing to share is I was in Germany when the wall came down.
Me too.
Yeah, I was in Germany, and my dad picked me up, and he said, because there was no social media or anything back then, and I landed back in the United Kingdom, and my dad said, "You do realize the wall's come down, don't you?" And I had no idea. So yeah, times.
Yeah, and and so that's the Havana background. No, and then let's say to cut a long story short, then I went back. I studied in Berlin international finance. Mm-hmm. And then, literally, Rachel, like you, perhaps we were there together. I was in Berlin when the wall came down, particularly at that night.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was a student, literally. And then after the wall came down, everything changed. Literally everything. Everything changed.
How did you feel being in Berlin when the wall was coming down?
I really felt great. It was it was immediately everyone realized that there will be let's say, a number of new opportunities, so many changes, and as well chances. So, well, we were young, we were in our early 20s, and for us, it was a new life full of opportunities. Maybe for others, maybe other people would look at it back differently, but for us as young students, it was just great. Yeah, and then it came, and then let's say I graduated. I joined a German bank called Commerzbank back then as a trainee, and then already, let's say, the international career started, because funny enough, my first place where I worked for Commerzbank was the British Crown colony of Gibraltar.
Okay.
So probably not too many people have Gibraltar in their CV as the place where the career started. Yeah, it was a company back then called Hispano Commerzbank Gibraltar. It was a kind of a joint venture, or something like that, between the German Commerzbank and the Spanish Banco Hispanoamericano. And that's why we did the business, and it was about discretionary portfolio management and all that. Didn't take so long, yeah. And then I came back. I had several locations in Germany where I worked, primarily in Berlin and in Düsseldorf. Yeah, and then for the first time, I came to Luxembourg some 15 years ago.
Okay.
It was not planned that I would still be here after 15 years, because as we all know, that's the usual Luxembourg history for some foreigners. They come here, or they intend to come here for a couple of, I don't know, weeks, month, or maximum years. And then the next career step would happen. But I know so many people here in Luxembourg who rather stay here for longer. So, and then we had the financial crisis. That was a very, very heavy impact. And right in the financial crisis, Commerzbank merged with Dresdner Bank, and I was back then CEO of both of those banks. That was a very difficult time, and we can come back to that later. Yeah, and then I had a step. I went to London for a couple of years with my family. Worked there for Commerzbank as well. Yeah, and then we merged the bank with Julius Baer.
Yeah,
some 7-8 years ago, and yeah, ever since I was Julius Baer here in Luxembourg. So I came back from London. I did my own Brexit in July 2016, literally. Yeah. So yeah, indeed, it was very close. Actually, I had my personal Brexit. Yeah, and since then I'm here in Luxembourg. So that's a little bit, let's say, a quite long career in some very short minutes to be described.
Wow. So I'm curious, as a leader in the financial services industry, how do you think your background has helped you? What do you think that's brought to you as a leader?
Yeah, I think one of the most important elements is to understand people and to be able to communicate with people, because our business in the financial industry, or particularly in the private banking industry in which I am. So I would like to refrain from commenting on the fund industry and so on, because I'm not so familiar with that. But in the private banking industry, so the name private already says it all. So literally, the main assets are human. So it's our clients. They are usually private individuals, wealthy private individuals, and our employees. So, and there is not much in between, except some products, cables, and so on. But literally, the assets are human. So as a leader, I would always put my first attention at the people, to be able to inspire them, as well to make them aware what the strategy is about, and to get their buy-in. Because without getting the buy-in of your people, you won't be successful as a leader. This is just impossible. So for me, this is the main ingredient of the recipe, is be very close to the people, understand the clients, try to explain the quite complex financial world in simple terms, because that's what's appreciated, and be as transparent as possible, even if the situation is not a pleasant one, like, for instance, in the financial crisis. I always tend to say, like, there's a nice quote from Winston Churchill. He said, a message, how good or bad the message might be, will not get better by not telling it. So, and this is a little bit the description of how we can, or how we should communicate with our people and how we should inspire them.
So going back to that experience where there was a merger, where you were involved in a merger, again, with that people in mind, you gave us a little taster that maybe something happened there, that it was challenging. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and what your observations were in a...
Absolutely, with pleasure, Rachel. This is a very good question, actually, because I thought about that quite often now in hindsight. It's now about, what is it? Yeah, some 14, 15 years ago, approximately. And the two banks had a long history, a really long history, the two banks, hundreds of years that they existed in Germany with foreign branches. And the people were really proud of being employed with those banks and being part of the history. And then that merger came, and that made something with the people. Both Commerzbank acquired Dresdner Bank. So first of all, those who were acquired, they had some concerns what's going to happen with them. But those who acquired the bank, meaning Commerzbank, they as well had some concerns. How is it going to go? And then, as always, when a merger comes, there is an element of synergies, efficiencies, which is to be achieved, which is by definition already a very difficult situation. But in the financial crisis on top, that was very challenging. And we had to lay off back then, I would say, about a third, if not more, people of the, let's say, combined organization. And those were people who were with both banks for a long time. And they shaped the history of those banks. And that was not easy. That was really not easy. But the most important thing back then, and that was an experience, it was all about transparency. Mm-hmm. It was all about honesty. And I tried to, back then, I remember that, I tried to speak to every person whom we laid off. And we are talking here about hundreds in person. Mm-hmm. Just in order to make sure that the message is going to be delivered correctly, honestly, to achieve at least the minimum, a kind of an understanding. I do not expect acknowledgement or positive reactions or reflections. No. But at least a factual understanding. So I think it was managed quite well. It's not about good or bad here. But if you ask me the question, do you still remember the financials back then? No. Do you still remember how the structure was? No. But do I still remember the names of the people? Well, not all of them, but a certain number, yeah. Because that was important back then.
Well, I want to acknowledge you for the way you handled that, because having those transparent and open and honest conversations, that's what human beings need.
Yeah, and Rachel, the moment when you are in that situation, you need to try to give your very best. This is not always perceived by the people who are affected like that. Yeah, it might be perceived totally different, as, let's say, as hardship, as a strong message, as let's say, a message from a manager without emotions and so on. And actually, I have full sympathy for that it has been or might have been perceived like that. Because once you're in such a situation, it's a very difficult one.
Yeah.
But I personally always try to tell myself, let's give it a try to do the best, or to do our best, or my best. And if it will be perceived differently, okay, that's a judgment. Fine. I cannot change a personal judgment. But I can tell myself, I've tried it, and it went quite well. That's a little bit the different perspective. We should not try as a leader, Rachel, to achieve something which is an illusion. that everyone is going to admire or love you. No, this is not going to happen. This is definitely not going to happen. But if people understand what is the target, what is the strategy, and whether this is explained correctly and clear, in a clear way, then, as I said earlier already, then you have the buy-in, and then the success will come. So that's a little bit my understanding of leadership and inspiration.
Absolutely. So talking about leadership and inspiration, you talked about going to London with your family and 2016, the breakfast. May I ask how old your kid or kids are?
My children are 20 and 15. So back then they were little, but they were already at school. So they had to be plucked out of the international school here in Luxembourg and had to be plugged into the international school in London. But look, I went through the same exercise. So there was not much room for debate or discussion because I know that this is of added value. Try to embrace a change. And it went well.
Yeah, different perspectives.
Absolutely.
So you've got a 20-year-old. So let's talk about a 21-year-old who's perhaps finishing university, is looking to enter financial services. Maybe a young Falk Fischer. What would be your wise counsel to that young person getting into the industry? What would you say to them?
Oh, Rachel, is a good question. Actually, yeah, I have a live example at home. What would I say? First of all, I would say good education is key. I would strongly advise to have an international exposure because it's not only about being well educated, but it is as well about being exposed to something. Education is just one thing, but exposure is how do you deal with that in the real world? And being exposed to some challenges, and that's what I would always prefer, but this is maybe personal history, being exposed to an international environment. This provides you with different perspectives. Well, it starts with a language, but language is just a reflection of culture. And culture is that what counts. Language is just how you express your culture, or among many other ways to express culture. Language is, as a standalone piece, is overrated. It's about the culture and the background. So then you have different perspectives, which you might like or you don't like, but at least you need to deal with that. And automatically you're exposed to different perspectives. And then you might need proper arguments to make your point of view clear and to understand the point of view of others. So that's, for me, is exposure. That's yet what you cannot learn at school purely from an education point of view. And then when we have talked about that, what would I tell a young person? Embrace change. Change is everywhere. Change will not stop. So don't even think about that. Once you have achieved something and you have a nice job for some 2, 3, 4 years, and everything gets cozy and comfortable because you know everyone around you and you have a fantastic team, you deal with nice clients or whatever job you do. And as we are all human beings, then there might come an element of complacency because it's all nice. And then the change is going to hit you. And then you better be prepared. And to avoid to be in such a situation, and that's the combination of a leadership element, and that's what I personally like, you rather drive the change, because otherwise change will come anyway. So rather be in the driver's seat. If you want to be a leader, rather be in the driver's seat and question that situation in which you're in. It's not about being hectic, and change things for the sake of having a change. This doesn't make sense either, because you need to, let's say, keep the people with you. But the moment it becomes a habit, then it's a very nice situation. But there is a dangerous element in it. Maybe dangerous is the wrong phrase, but I use it. When you have a family And we are all guests in that country here, Rachel, in Luxembourg. And you have that international background, then you tend to move quite often. And then you have a plug-and-play family. And then you live here today and tomorrow in another country and the day after tomorrow in another country. You need a strong family to manage that. And there's as well an element of change. But if you like it, and if you have grown up like that, then I would tell a 20 or 21 young lady or gentleman or girl or boy that education, exposure, and willingness to change, my view, then you have already a lot in your backpack as tools to manage professional life or even personal life.
I think that's very wise advice. I love your quote. It's up there with Winston Churchill's. Change is everywhere. Change will not stop. Drive the change. By Falk Fischer.
Okay. Good.
Love
from the top of my head or even from the bottom of my heart, because that's, and look, Rachel, I like that you were emphasizing on that. I'm not going to say that everyone needs to do it like that, because some people have as well a fear of, let's say, to manage changes quite often, and there is nothing wrong about it. It depends a little bit on the job you want to do. Yeah? So that's why this is not an advice I would like to give to everyone. But if someone wants to look into the professional life from an international perspective, then adaptation, change is inevitable. It will just happen.
Yeah. So talking about change, what do you think is a game changer that could make the financial services industry in its broadest sense an even better industry than it is today? And you can be contentious.
Well, Rachel, there's many, there's many, and we could talk for hours, but maybe I pick one. This is digitalization, automation, visualization, so the new technologies. This goes without saying. So I think the new technology has shaped many industries around the world. But when I talk about our financial industry, and particularly the private banking industry, I think what we will see going forward is that everything what can be automated or digitalized will be. And everything what cannot be digitalized or automated will become more valuable. So we will see processes, products, applications to become a commodity. You know, Rachel, you and me, we both have a phone and we talk via Zoom right now. Yeah? You potentially use the technology differently than I, but we both use more or less the same tool.
Yeah.
We do not spend a thought on that tool. It's just there. It's a commodity. It's not adding value.
Yeah.
In my view, adding value is the conversation between the two of us. And this cannot be automated or digitalized. Yeah, we are here a little bit on the screen. Maybe we are half digitalized, but we are still human. Yeah? Oh, yeah. So, and that's why what's going to become more valuable is something like moral, ethics, creativity. And when you then look into professional life, some jobs, which were in the past rather, let's say, had a rather repetitive profile, I think they will change going forward and automation will take over. It's not a threat. Again, embrace change. It's not going to happen within a split second, but it's a process. But the process is unstoppable. It's like a wave. At first, it is small, but you cannot reverse it. Yeah? It's impossible.
Yeah.
So That's why I think going forward, and I talk for my particular private banking industry, it's going to be a combination out of technology, products, processes, procedures. They're going to become more and more a commodity. And then you have the personal interaction with the two human beings, with the employees, the relationship managers, the client advisors, whomever in the value chain, with the clients. And that's where the added value is. And that's where the advice is. And that's where the personal interaction is. And that's why, back to your question of what would I tell a 20-year-old person, be able to manage the technology, but as well be able to connect with people.
Yeah.
People management is crucial. You can be the best professional and you can be super well educated in your specific territory. If you are not able to connect with people and to lead them, if you want to be a leader, it's all about leading people. It's not about leading processes and products.
Couldn't agree more, Falk. Couldn't agree more. Human. So talking about humans, I'm talking to one now. When you're not doing this fabulous work for a Swiss private bank, what do you love to do in your spare time?
Okay, yeah. So maybe because I grew up in the tropics, so in the tropical, let's say, nice climate environment, I like to be outdoors. So first of all, I do some sports like everyone probably. I run. I run quite often, literally every morning.
Wow.
Yeah, quite early.
Good for meditation too, isn't it? Running.
Yeah. And that's an interesting thing. I don't listen to music. I just run. And then I think, and that's literally inspiration, even if it's dark and gray and wet, like it's usually in Luxembourg during winter time, but it's still okay, No, and then I like to ride my Harley Davidson.
Ooh.
That's a bit of a hobby. I do it already for many decades. So I have it already for long. So I started riding bikes when I was really young. And that's, we can now talk about the American freedom for long. It's not what it's about. It's just you're on your own. Mm-hmm. That's what I like. You're very close to nature. And let's say someone who has a bike understands what I'm talking about. It's completely different than being in a car, because you're really out there. And again, it's like when you run, you just enjoy. And I'm not that type who would do these bike rides with 10 or 15 or 20 people or so. No, that's not necessarily what it is about. I just want to enjoy the situation and go through the hills and being connected to nature. And and the third one is I like camping, to be out there in a tent or in a caravan. Nowadays, when we get older, it's no longer a tent, but it's a caravan. Yeah. So, so at least to stay a bit dry. No, actually, yes. With my family, go camping, indeed. And we really go everywhere, no matter where. And we did it already in many places across the globe. Very basic. But this is the last remark on that. You get easily connected to people because you're out there. And then you bump into people into whom you would otherwise not bump in the country where you are. But that's nice. And it doesn't matter who you are and what you do for living. It doesn't just matter. You just connect there, have a beer or have a nice steak at the barbecue, and you're going to be fine.
Fantastic. So there were 3 words that came up. I might be way off the mark, but there were 3 words that were coming up for me: freedom, rebellion, and connectivity. So they were the 3 words that I felt from that. So I'm just curious, because we've never had a biker on the show. So what do you think, to conclude our conversation for today, what do you think the financial services industry could learn from a biker? Ooh.
Okay, that's okay. Never thought about that. Really never thought about that. But okay, I would say independence of mind,
Mm.
because as I said, when you're riding a bike, and look, people ride bikes differently. No? Some people do it for the purpose of real transportation. Fine, I don't do that. For me, it's really fun. If the weather is not nice, I don't go biking. Why should I? Yeah. So it's really about the positivity, positive energy. And as I said, independence of mind, because then you're free. And yeah, maybe to connect this the various questions, the financial industry, what could the industry learn from it? That's a big question. But maybe people in the industry and maybe the young generation to come is relax. Don't take things too serious. It will change anyway. Sitting on a bike can be quite dangerous. So try to manage it and try not to overestimate your capabilities. Manage. Listen to good advice. Be a good team player. And then do it your way.
Love it. Falk Fischer, it's been an absolute joy to have you on Flex in the City this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining me.
It was a pleasure, Rachel. Really a pleasure. So hope to see you soon in person again.
Absolutely.
You just listened to Flex in the City. Catch us on our next episode.